everyone, Leani Lopez here with another episode of I Got Nothing, a podcast for exhausted writers. I am joined today by a fellow exhausted writer. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Carolyn Eichhorn, and I'm talking to you today from North Carolina in the mountains.
I'm in the mountains too, just up north. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am an accidental writer, I guess. This wasn't really my plan, but I write mystery and thriller fiction mostly. I thought I would be a novelist. I ended up publishing more short stories. So nothing has gone to plan, which is ironic because my day job is as a project manager. So it makes no sense.
It makes perfect sense. Writing will do that. Writing will really throw you for a loop.
It has its own agenda.
And you do have a novel published.
I do. I just released a culinary cozy mystery called Murder in the Mix in October that I'm super excited about. I've been working on it for a while, and it's about a writer. It's about a ghostwriter working with a client, and that client is a celebrity chef who is found dead in her restaurant in the middle of the project, and then the writer has to work out where to go from there.
And that is why it's on my wish list. That sounds amazing. I'm a ghostwriter too, so I immediately perked up.
Yeah, there's something about, trying to take someone else's story and help them tell it, but not as yourself, tell it as the other person, the other character, the other voice. So that was really interesting to me. And again, accident. I actually had been sitting in on a panel at BoucherCon many years ago, which is the World Mystery Convention, full of fans and writers and publishers, and it's a really good time if you're into mysteries. I recommend. And the panel was on writers who collaborate with each other, like writing pairs, like Preston and Child. And, anyway, and I thought this might be a really fun thing to do. What if I did a project where, I did the writing and then maybe I collaborated with a chef, and the whole idea of a group project outside of college quickly died.
That's a horror story unto itself.
Yeah, I mean, all of the reasons you would suspect that would be a difficult thing are in fact true. But I thought there is no reason why I can't write about a collaboration. And again, all of the things that might go wrong, although nothing in college prepared me for your co-collaborator is murdered. So.
I'd be concerned if it did.
Yeah,
the curriculum has really changed over the years. I love that idea. And I think what draws me in and speaks to me the most is, like you said, like being a ghostwriter, you're writing a story, but from somebody else's voice. And it's almost like you personally as the writer is this like character inception kind of thing, because it's them writing from someone's voice and then you're writing from their voice and everybody else's voice. And it just gets very meta on the surface.
I tell you, my early drafts were a hot mess because I started with like the recorded interviews. So it's all in Marisol's voice. Marisol is the chef who dies. It's in her voice and her stories as this recorded interview. And then I have another voice, which is Gina's voice, the writer, and her life and her work and those things. And then I had the third section, which is the finished product. So Marisol's story, in this case, an introduction to a particular recipe or something that has great personal significance to her. So her voice as written by Gina. And in the beginning, I had them all interspersed together through the novel, which it was maybe a little too complex. So I ended up pulling those like finished sections and including them in the end, along with the recipes as they would appear in the finished, cookbook / memoir, should that be, published.
Mhm.
So you still get them, but you just don't get them all at once, which was a little chaotic.
Yeah, and I think that's such a huge part of the writing process for any genre is, you do the first draft of how the story is in your head, like the ideas you have, the scenes you have, and then there inevitably becomes a certain point where you're like, is this too much?
Yeah, you really do have to be willing to rearrange or set some things aside or eliminate some things altogether and just see if it makes sense, because that early version did not flow and it was very confusing. And even I was confused. I'm like, should I use a different font for each one of these voices? And it's just a mess.
That's hilarious and totally understanding.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. So you said you were an accidental writer.
Yeah, I was working at Disney. I worked at Disney for 15 years, and I was putting myself through school a little at a time along the way, and I loved school. And when I finished my bachelor's degree, which is in the super helpful field of humanities, I went on to a master's program in liberal studies, which is even more useful. And during the period of time where I was working out what my thesis was going to be, my initial thoughts would be I would write about mystery and detective fiction. And then I'm like, I am a paper writing machine. I have zero problem cranking out these assignments. And the whole idea of spending a year writing a paper that I could probably do in a month and a half did not interest me. So I talked to my faculty advisor and I'm like, what if I wrote some detective fiction? And he had that abject horror expression. And I'm like, so then the bargaining starts. Like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll do some research and then I'll write a couple of chapters. And if they suck, then I'll just write I'll write a thesis paper, like a thesis paper. But if they're good, then, So he let me plod along, but then he got on board after the first couple of chapters. That novel, I wrote a novel. That novel, by the way, will never see the light of day. It is in the basement at my university, tucked in, in between other people's.
They will not find it until the apocalypse.
Stuff. No, yeah. It was my learning book. Yeah. But it wasn't my plan. But once I did it and I kicked it around for a couple of years to see if maybe I could spruce it up, and at some point you just have to let that one go and start on the next thing.
Yeah.
And this book eventually became the next thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel you on that. My first book I had been trying to write for eons. It originally started as a collaboration between me and my sister. And because we had both written...
So
Yes. We had both written different chapters, but we had very similar styles. So they almost felt like they could be in the same universe. And I was going to college for writing. I knew I wanted to be a writer. I knew I wanted to write books. At first, I thought maybe I wanted to be an editor. And then I was like, no, I don't care about grammar. And so I worked on this thing and got a lot of it done for like my final senior project. And eventually it became the first book I published as an ebook, but this was in 2013 when that wasn't really a thing. And it, of course, like every budding writer, it's going to be a trilogy. And I have all the books planned. And then when I finished it, I was like, I'm done with these characters. I'm done with them. I want to work on something else. And so eventually I took it down because I didn't want to have the first book of a trilogy that would never be finished up. Right. And I ended up doing it. My sister had moved on to something completely different. So she was like, here, have what I wrote. So I feel you on the collaboration side of things, and also burying it so it doesn't see the light of day again.
Yeah, that's not a personal challenge to anyone. There's no prize involved here except some ridiculously poor plotting.
Yep. My dad really liked it, so that was sweet.
There you go.
He still talks about it. I'm like, Dad, it's not happening.
Yeah.
So what did it feel like when you finally finished that book?
I would love to be able to say it was awesome and I was so super proud of myself, but I mean, and I guess I was, but it really was abject terror. It was like, I don't want this to be the proof that I absolutely cannot do this well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had big time imposter syndrome about it. And it took a while before I really felt like a writer. It wasn't that book didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't until much, much later. Both because I had started this book, the Murder in the Mix book, which I have a funny story about a retreat that I thought I would go to and to help me write it, which was not what I thought it was going to be.
Oh no.
Yeah. But I went back. I actually went back to school again because I love school, and I got my MFA in creative writing. And as part of going through that program, which was amazing, was it a good financial decision? Probably not, but it was amazing. And as part of going through that process, I branched out a little bit, and I took a couple of semesters with a mentor whose area of focus was short fiction. And not because I wanted to write short fiction, but because I thought it would really, really help me focus on sentence level writing a little better instead of big picture concept,
Yeah, start small that get bigger kind of situation.
Exactly. And to experiment a little bit more. It's really, really hard to experiment at the novel level. It's like a big aircraft carrier,
Yeah.
But you can play around more with shorter things. And so I did that just as part of my program. And I started getting those shorter pieces actually published. They got noticed, and they made me better. And then I was able to apply that later to my novel. So by the time I finally finished my novel, which took a while, I did feel more like a real writer. I had done the work, and I had taken the classes, and I had put some things out there that were varied, not all the same type of story, a couple of essays, a couple of nonfiction pieces. So then I felt a little bit more like, yay, I'm on the right path.
Yeah, I have been an indie writer officially since like just after 2018. Maybe a little later than that. That's when I left my full-time job to write full-time, and I became a ghostwriter. But I was still working on other people's things. And when I launched my indie author career, I guess that was more 2021, I had launched it with 2 novels I had written years before that. And they were just literally just hanging out in my drafts, like a full novel and a novella. And I worked on a different project, which was writing based, but it was a audio drama, so completely different medium. But the book I'm working on now, I have been trying to write for a very long time. And I feel that sense that you were talking about, like, I'm a writer now, because this book is at a time where I'm more knowledgeable about my writing style, my craft, and what I want to do with it and what stories I want to tell. So when this book comes out, I almost feel like it'll be a relaunch of my author side of things.
Right.
And when I'm writing it, I'm like, yeah, I'm a writer when I write this story. Which it's so interesting how that works, because I've been a writer for so long. I am a writer. But sometimes there's just that certain project where it just kind of clicks. And you're like, okay, yes.
Yeah, and I think, too, there's some value in understanding that, you're not the only one struggling with cramming in way too much backstory or, all of like the common things that happen, or feeling like your first draft is absolute garbage. I mean, when you realize that like everybody feels that, then then you're like, okay, I must be doing it right. If
it's like, oh, I got the imposter syndrome, I'm doing it.
That's right. That's exactly right. This familiar feeling is.
Oh, this is what everybody's talking about. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you plan to write another book? Do you have anything cooking at the moment?
I do. I am writing the next book in what I hope will be a nice, long, profitable series.
Awesome.
Are you listening, Hallmark Movies and Mysteries? I'm just saying. With Gina. And this time Gina is going to a writing retreat with a nice collection of other types of writers at a former summer camp, now turned event and retreat space.
I have seen plenty of horror movies. I'm on board.
Yeah. When I started research, everybody's like, just go get Friday the 13th. And I'm like,
which is when we're recording, FYI.
That's not exactly how I think this is going to go, but.
You're like, God, I hope not. So much blood.
Yeah. But if you've ever been to like a writing workshop or a writing retreat that's, not part of your educational program or something, there certainly is a lot of interesting material there in, how people give feedback to other people and how people feel about their own work. And it's really ripe for a lot of inspiration.
And did your writing retreat inspire some of these events?
Yeah, it did. It's funny, and I'll probably pull from some of that inspiration. But the writing retreat I went to, I thought was in fact a writing retreat. So I showed up with just like the first few chapters, and it was in a park, a state park or something, with like little cabins in Virginia somewhere. And I drove down from Baltimore and got there in the evening, the night before it was supposed to start. And it was late enough so that the other people who had showed up earlier had all gone out to dinner together. Mm-hmm. And when they got back, I learned that one of them, there had been an incident at the restaurant, one of them had gotten so upset at what the workshop facilitator had told her that she quit.
Oh my God.
The night before. We actually started.
That's not a good sign.
Yeah. So that's how it sort of kicked off. And I wasn't there for that. So I didn't hear how that conversation went, but I understand he essentially said, this book that you have isn't going to work and you should just write a different one.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm not a teacher or anything, but I don't think that's the way to go.
I know. They paid money for this. So the first day, the survivors, those of us who are still on the island, we're all in like the great room of one of these cabins, and we're going around and talking a little bit about our project. And when they got to me, I didn't have a title yet. And the facilitator's like, wait, what? And I'm like, well, I have some ideas, but I don't. He's like, you need to have a title. And I'm like, okay.
All right, chill, dude. You didn't like kill someone. You just didn't have a title.
He's like, go back to your cabin and come up with 10 titles. I'm like, okay. He's like, now. Go now.
Who is this dude?
He kicked me out. And I went back and I wrote 10 titles, came up with 10 titles. And then I came back and he called on me again and I was sharing them. Anyway, one of the titles that I came up with was Murder in the Mix. And so that ended up sticking. So I don't know if I should thank him for that or
My
what,
God.
but I'm still in touch with a handful of the, fellow survivors from this thing. It was, I don't know, 3 days or something like that. And we got to practice pitching to an agent and some other things. And I say practice because the agent that they brought didn't handle the type of work that we were doing.
Oh, that's
so there
helpful.
it was more about being able to get feedback from an actual agent about our pitch without the pressure of trying to sell them specifically on our work. But yeah, the whole thing was odd.
Yeah.
So I like, this is going to be a book someday.
It has to be. Something has to come out of this weird experience.
That someday is now.
Well, at least something came of it. That's wild. That is. I think I would have also left. I would have been like, I don't want to be scolded. I am a full-grown adult.
I know. I started thinking about it as, anthropological research or something.
Maybe I should observe this man from afar, see what's gonna happen. Wild.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Well, aside from that situation, how did you go about developing the idea, or how do you go about developing an idea into a story?
Well, you start with a core idea, and then you just glom onto it and you make it as bad as it possibly can be for the people that are involved. So you're like, how can I make this worse? How far can I take this and still, live in the land of possibility? And then sometimes it's fun. I used to have, I don't have one right now, but I used to have I called it the crazy idea board. So there would be some just completely wacky, unrelated thing that would occur to me, and I would jot it down. And then if I find that I'm getting kind of stuck, I would look at the crazy idea board and I'd be like, all right, how can I get this? How can I bolt on this thing that doesn't go at all into this story to kind of add layers? So I do that sometimes. And then I feel vindicated because the last BoucherCon I went to was the one in Nashville. So not last year, but the year before. And Harlan Coben was the guest of honor. And he was talking about how he'll take an idea, and the general idea will be something. And then there'll be something else that happens in his life or to somebody that he knows that's wildly unrelated, and he'll mush them together. And that's how he comes up with his plots. And I'm like, yeah, I feel seen.
That's amazing. And wow. That's such a smart idea.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Note to self, whiteboard for a new office soon.
I love my whiteboard. I jot things down and they don't make any sense for a while. And then later I'll be looking for something, and then it'll be, survivalist group. And I'll be like, oh yeah.
That is an amazing way to develop an idea, because you don't get bogged down by the details of that original idea. Because I feel like, at least for me, when I have an idea, and it's kind of what I'm dealing with now with my story Battle Cry, because it was told a certain way in the first season, and I was trying to think of what season 2 would be like. And in the beginning, I was really trying to stick with the initial idea. And I realized I can't do that anymore because that initial idea was solved in season 1. It does not apply to the next season. So I have to think outside the box because these survivors of the first season are literally outside the box now. So,
Yeah.
wow, yeah. And I've started getting ideas that seem so wild, but I'm like, you're building this world. So it's not going to be like it was, and you're not going to think in that, sort of hyper-focused way because things are expanding now. And it just makes the story that much richer when you get to work in those ideas that you didn't see coming, so the readers probably aren't going to see coming either.
And, I'll be honest, there are a handful that don't work and they just don't translate sometimes, but
Yeah.
I'll give it the old college try and see. And then sometimes they do. And it can be small, stupid, random things. I'm a big believer in eavesdropping and in Starbucks while you're waiting for your coffee.
People watching. Yeah.
In lines for anything, anywhere, you will get some gold nuggets in there, and I'll jot that down, and and it could be used in a later story.
Yeah, and I just always think of this one bit of dialogue that I thought of on like a car ride that made me laugh like the whole 20 minutes in the car. And I managed to work it into the script. I managed to get my actors to play that scene. And then as I was editing the episode, it didn't work.
Oh, well, tuck it away. You may find a place.
It just
didn't work yet
for the tone. And I sadly had to delete it. And I even put in the script a sad face next to the X. It was like, you were funny, but it just doesn't fit. So it's tucked away for like a future season. I was like, I will make this work. At some point, this will come back.
It can be the first thing on your new whiteboard.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. Not just having a whiteboard, but having an actual workspace and having my own office is going to be very fun. So since this is an advice podcast, what is the best or worst piece of writing advice you've ever received?
I've had some good writing advice. Reading your work aloud is huge. And if you can get somebody else to read it to you when you're in the room, that's even better, because if they stumble, your reader is going to stumble because, we know how it's going to go in our head. And I have a difficult time trying to revise my work on the screen. I have to print it and write on it because I will gloss right over the errors, I'm sure, in the same way I did when I made them. So that's a good one, reading your work aloud. I would say giving yourself permission to just suck is good. Like not to have any expectations on your first draft. I had a teacher tell me one time that your first draft is really just notes to yourself so that you don't forget what the story is going to be about. And that stuck with me because then you can go back and you can mold it into anything that you want it to be. But it's impossible to fix it if you don't have something to work on. So bad advice. Do not rely on loved ones or family members as your readers.
Yes. My family is very supportive and they shower you with compliments. But you kind of need someone who is a little bit more objective.
It doesn't work either way. I mean, my partner's first read of my then draft novel was, "You use a lot of commas." And I'm like, what? Huh? I've spent years on this thing and that's your feedback. And if they do have something, that they don't like about it or they don't think it works, it hurts more coming from somebody you're in a relationship with. So
Yeah.
he just doesn't read any of my stuff until it's ready to go out the door.
Yep, that makes sense. My husband has worked on my audio dramas with me, and there is some clashing when that happens.
Yeah.
And I have to be like, no, you got to put the wife hat down. And then sometimes I have to be like, okay, I am director now. I am not wife. You are saying this to your director. Yeah, I agree. 100%. And what advice would you give new indie authors who are just starting out?
I would say don't be afraid to set your work down. You're going to be working on, I don't know, presumably more than one thing in your indie author career. And there are times when the right call is to set it down. And start something else. And I've heard people say things like, write a novel and then put it in a drawer for a year. And that doesn't really work for me, but it is true that you can spend all of your waking attention on reworking one thing until it's so overworked you don't recognize it anymore, or you're frustrated, or you're stuck, or whatever. And sometimes you need to just get down what you need to get down, and then you need to step away, work on something else, do something else, and then come back to it. And I am almost always surprised when I do, in that, I did capture this thing that I wanted to capture, or, oh, this part was funny the way I hoped it would be funny, or so don't lock all of your hopes and dreams on one piece. Write it, work on it, start on the next thing. Starting on the next thing is important.
Yes, it really is. And people have said, like, to me, like, oh, Leani, you work on so many different stories and types of stories and genres. And I'm like, I have to do that to let my brain rest on the thing that I was just working on. Mm-hmm. So if they're too similar, I'm going to get them confused. And I'm going to get things confused and mixed up. But the book I'm working on now, I've been trying to work on for a really long time. And I had to set it down to do something else, even though I was just like, I want to finish this, but I was just at this wall and I needed to just set it aside. So sometimes you really do need to just put it aside. And I think there's this fear that we're not going to pick it up again.
Right.
Like if we stop now, it's not going to happen. It will happen. You're just going to burn yourself out if you don't stop now and take a break.
There's a little bit of that fear, like when you have a really good idea and it's right before you fall asleep, and if you don't write it down,
it's gone. Yeah.
Right. So there's a little bit of that when you set a project to the side, like, well, I'm not even going to remember why I started it or where I was going with it, but you do. I think your subconscious continues to like noodle on it while you're doing other things, which, is why we come up with our best ideas while we're driving.
Yeah. Or in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Neither place very conducive to taking notes.
Fun fact, I share this with all my author clients because I'm an author coach. There are crayons that are made for toddlers that write on shower walls and wash off with water.
Really?
Yes. You can find them in any toy store or any like little kid aisle. And if you have one in the shower and you get an idea, you can write it on the shower wall. And then just wash it off with soap after. So,
I have called myself. I've called myself or done voice memos in the car if I'm driving into town or something, so that I don't forget an idea.
You may seem like a crazy person to whoever uses the shower afterwards, but it does help.
Well, the crazy
don't touch
person,
my notes.
That might actually be legit, because more than once I have woken up in the morning and looked at the notes that were so brilliant at 2:30 in the morning, and I'm like, this is gibberish. This makes no sense.
I was afraid I would forget this.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to me today, Carolyn. And where can people find you?
Well, my book is available at any place you would normally purchase your books online, in ebook and paperback. I'm a big fan of bookshop.org. So if you have a favorite indie bookshop near you, you can actually order your book online and they get some credit for it. So that's a great way to support your local bookstore, even for books that may not be on the shelves.
Awesome. All of that will be in the description of this episode with links, so you can find her everywhere. This is a reminder that I do have a Patreon. Patrons receive episodes up to 2 days earlier than the general public. There are exclusive blogs and podcast episodes that are only found on Patreon. You'll also receive discounts on writing services, behind-the-scenes tidbits for Battle Cry, including access to our blooper reel, access to my Discord server, and shout-outs in future podcast episodes. So head over to patreon.com/Leani M. Lopez or check out the link in the description. Shout out to my newest member, Allie. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for chatting, Carolyn, and to everybody who's listening, happy writing.